this off? Okay. Yeah.
There you go.
Think that'll work? Okay. Whew. It is live. Well, good evening. How are y'all doing? Good. I'm glad. Since we didn't meet last week, we didn't get to talk about last week's Bible study, Bible reading. So I'm going to go ahead and start back with that. So we're going to look starting with Genesis 41 and then go all the way up through Exodus. Yeah, 29. So there's a lot of things to talk about. First part of that from 2 weeks ago was talking about Joseph and his story. What was the most heartbreaking to you? The family betraying him, the lies he endured especially from Potiphar's wife, or the guy forgetting him. Which one of those things seemed to touch you more?
Family betrayal.
Now what? The family betrayal.
What comes to my mind in the whole situation is how he gave God the credit for him being where he was at.
Right.
To end up the way that they did. And so to me that it's kind of the final, I guess you could say that's what, when you get to that part, that's pretty
Yep.
good.
Yeah, they meant it for evil, but God meant it for good. Do you think he thought that while he was in prison? He knew God was with him. But I wonder if he, I know God had him there for a reason, and he probably, believed that, but it wasn't till he didn't really see the fulfillment of it until he was put into power. And then it was like, oh, this is what you wanted all along, So yeah, it was, that would have been a very difficult thing. His life was not easy, yet he continued or the Bible continues to say that God was with him through all of that. What does that say to us?
Well, we're saying that made him to realize that this was an answer to his dreams.
Oh, yes.
He had been having that
Yep.
he had before the family's betrayal.
Yep.
I wonder when that dawned on him.
Yeah. I wonder if it was when the brothers actually came and knelt before him. And he was like, oh, that's what this was. I don't know. Because when he was in prison, if he thought about it, I don't know if he would have thought, okay, how are you going to work this out, God? I think he knew God was going to work it out, but how, he really didn't know.
Patience.
Yes. What do you think God is demonstrating in repeatedly through the Old Testament? It seems like he's always choosing the younger son instead of the firstborn. Does that seem fair? Why not? Yeah.
It seems like he did that because in man's eyes, the oldest child is always the one that is the heir.
Right.
They're always the one that's the leader, and he didn't see it that way.
Yeah. I'm trying to remember exactly where I was, but I know at some point, at some meeting with, I don't know whether it was I was probably with youth ministers when I was a youth minister, but I think they were looking at this kind of an idea, and they asked us how many of us, the ministers, youth ministers, were firstborn, and very few. Very, very few. Most of us were, the younger son, second son. And in my case, I had an older brother and a younger sister, so I was in the middle, and I was the mediator a lot. And even after I got to be an adult, I find myself a lot of times between people that are, at odds, and I'm in the middle trying to, and I wonder if that's because growing up as a middle child, I learned how to do that better than my brother or my sister probably did. And maybe that's one of the reasons that God chooses a lot of second or third kids. Yes?
Maybe the younger son was able to see what went on in the family and all the mistakes made and all the errors,
Yeah.
everything like that. He gained wisdom and knowledge
Yeah.
through that. And
Yes, I avoided a lot of things that my brother did because I knew I didn't want to get in trouble like he did.
my daughter told me that.
Yep. I avoided one teacher at school because he was always getting on to Greg about something. I thought, well, I don't want to have, so I didn't ever take that. Probably should have. It was speech. I probably could have used that, but I avoided that one. Why were Jacob and then later Joseph emphatic about what to do with their remains, their bones? Yeah. Yes. That was the promised land. Yes. Abraham bought that land, right? As a burial place. And I think more so Joseph than Jacob, but Joseph, it was, 400 years later that they finally took his bones and buried him there. And I think that was just a remembrance of them all the time that, hey, this is not our home. This is not where our ancestors are going to be buried. Joseph's going to be buried in the land of Canaan. And it was... I don't know. Yeah. I know that's the only piece of land that they owned until they conquered the promised land. And
It amazes me how they, not just that particular transaction, but some of the other transactions, is that people wanted to give them what they wanted to buy.
yeah,
They were adamant about
paying for it.
they didn't want to be indebted to anyone.
Right. And a lot of that is the way people did things, business things at that time period. Oh yeah, it's nothing between you and me. You go take it. And no, I've got to pay for it. And trying to, I don't know whether it was kind of a safe face kind of thing or what, but that was just the way they did it. They bartered back and forth. What about Moses? What tribe was Moses from? Levi. Was he the oldest? No, Aaron is older. Levi was one of the older sons, second or third. Second. But when Jacob was blessing them, he passed over Reuben. I thought Simeon was next. Levi, Simeon, and finally came to Judah. The fourth son was the one that got the blessing. Why didn't Levi and Simeon get the blessing? What excuse or what reasoning, I guess I should say, what reasoning did Jacob have?
I think it had to do with when they revenged the sister.
Right.
I think that was
Killed all the people in Shechem because the king's son basically raped their sister, and they went in and killed them all. How does that relate to Moses? Have you ever thought about that?
He was a murderer.
He was a murderer. He had a temper. I mean, just like Levi killed out of anger. First thing, this Egyptian is beating this Jewish man, and Moses got mad and he killed him. You see a lot of similarities throughout the lineage there. I thought that was pretty interesting. Somebody brought that up on one of the questions in here. Moses was very similar. But I think he changed a lot. Well, I know he did between the time he left Egypt and we went back. What about the Hebrew midwives? I mean, we've already talked about Abraham lying and then later Isaac lying about Rebekah. How is the Hebrew midwives different? They didn't want to kill the babies?
As a kind of clever excuse.
Yeah.
But what, I couldn't figure out why they made the statement and the midwives had children too.
Well, I don't think they had any.
I know, but a lot of times we don't know what anybody's family is.
Right.
But all of a sudden, at the end of this, in the midwives.
Yeah, I think that because they were, how would you put, because they would not kill the Hebrew babies, that God blessed them, allowed them to have babies of their own. Because I think they were barren up until that point. I think that's what it was talking about. Another thing was, it wasn't for their own lives that they were lying, right? Abraham, he lied because he was afraid they'd kill him. Same thing with Isaac. He was afraid that the people would kill him. But the midwives, it wasn't about, trying to protect themselves. They were trying to protect the babies. And later, there's another one, Rahab, that we'll talk about in a few weeks, months, that also lied. God didn't bless them. I've preached on this before, but God didn't bless them because they lied. God blessed them in spite of the fact that they lied, which also is good news for us, because He'll still bless us even though we are sinners too. And we lie and we cheat and we steal and we do all of these things. We get angry, which Jesus equated, if you get angry without cause, that's the same as murder. I mean, we're guilty of all of that. And yet, God still blesses us and still uses us. Moses made a lot of excuses about different things. I can't talk so good. Who am I? I'm nobody. What was the other? Finally, he said, send somebody else. But I was thinking there's someone. Can you relate to any of those? Anyone in specific? Anyone in particular? Specific? Yeah. Of his excuses? I don't remember all of them. I wish I did. I just went blank. There's a song by, I can see his face, blind composer, blind singer, called Moses. You know what I'm talking about? He's from Lawton, Oklahoma. I can't even remember how he put it.
It's not Royce.
No. What? No, that doesn't sound right either. Anyway. Okay. First it was like, who's going to listen to me? Who would I say that sent me, and who, those kind of things. And then he said, but I've never been eloquent. I can relate to that. I've never been eloquent. I tend to stutter at times, and I have a kind of a monotone voice at times. So, yeah, I can relate to all of that. And then he's like, send somebody else. It's really funny because God says, okay, Aaron's going to go with you and he'll be your mouthpiece and you'll tell Aaron what to say, and then Aaron will tell Pharaoh. But when he's talking, most of the time he's talking to Pharaoh, and Moses is the one talking to Pharaoh, saying, let my people go. I always thought that was kind of funny. That. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think it was probably, it's several days' journey to get there. He would probably been on the road already 2 or 3 days getting there. And, yep, he's on his way. I knew God knew. He already had him prepared. So in the plagues, this is just kind of amazes me. God starts the plagues. The first one is the water turning to blood, right? What did the magicians do? They turned water to blood, right? Why? You ever thought of that? They have a little bit of clear water that they can drink, and what do? They turn it into blood. It's like, why would you do that? And of course, it does say that they dug along the Nile and were able to get groundwater out that wasn't affected. But and then they had the frogs, and they were able to duplicate that. Again, why would you want to duplicate it? What should they have done? I mean, if they really were able to do anything.
They were trying to prove God didn't exist, that he wasn't real.
Right. But wouldn't it have been better, is what I'm getting at, is wouldn't it have been better if they would have got rid of the blood or got rid of the frogs or any of the others instead of making it worse? If they were really powerful, they would get rid of all of that problems and yet they couldn't because it came from God. And after the second one, they realized that. And after when the gnats came, they couldn't do that one. And they went to Pharaoh and they said, this has to be the finger of God. And Pharaoh wouldn't believe. He probably just thought that Moses was better than, a better magician than they were. And that's why he didn't believe. In fact, it was, I don't remember now. I looked it up, but 4 or 5 plagues before Pharaoh finally said something about, I'm wrong, I sinned. And when did when did Pharaoh tell Moses to quit, to send the frogs away? Tomorrow. Again, why? I mean, it talked about them being in their kneading troughs, in their ovens, and in their beds, everywhere. Why would you want to keep them one more day? Get them out here now. A lot of those things that happened back there is just like, were they not very logical at all? Couldn't figure it. Why would you want to wait till tomorrow? In fact, I heard a sermon, and I've preached a sermon. I borrowed the title from another, the guy I heard it from first, but he called it One More Night with the Frogs. It's like, really? Why would you do that? I don't know. They just didn't make any sense. And then what happened after what was the 10th plague? Yep, the 10th, the last plague. Death of the firstborn. And how did the Israelites protect themselves? Stay in the house. Put blood on the top, which when they did that, it would drop down to the floor underneath and on both sides. And what does that remind us of? The cross, the crown of thorns, the holes in his feet and the holes in his hands when he's holding it out. This is definitely a picture of Jesus. And then what happened when they left? What did they do to the Egyptians? Plundered them. And it wasn't, God made them favorable. It wasn't like, they went next door and grabbed things. They just said, hey, can you give me some silver? Yes, here, leave. Anything you want, just take it and get out of here. We don't want you here anymore. And and God provided, and then they had those things to build the temple. And the tabernacle, and all the utensils and the table and the ark and all of that stuff. They had the material and the wealth to do that because the Egyptians gave it to them. Now they also used that in making the cow, the calf, the idol. But I guess they didn't use all of it, everything, because Moses ground it up and put it in the water and made them drink it. So they still had money, or not money, but materials left to do all of the rest of the stuff. How long were they in Egypt? 430 years to the day is what it says. That's amazing to me. Now, God told Abraham they would be in Egypt or in a foreign country for 400 years. I don't think he was being real specific with Abraham. It was going to be around 400 years, but it was 430 years to the day. The day they entered and the day they left would have been the same day of the year. That to me is amazing.
Funny that they would keep track of it.
Yes.
I mean, it's
Yeah. And then when they get out there, how does God lead them? Right. And what practical reason, or practical, how did I put it? Not reason. Practically speaking, how are the pillar of cloud and the pillar of fire helpful? They followed the light at night because, a lot of times they were moving at night. But what about the cloud? Shade during the daytime. Yeah, I had never thought about that until I, listened to the podcast, and she talked about that. And I've been in desert areas, desert-like areas. I haven't been in like the Sahara or something major, but I've been in desert-like areas, and yes, shade is almost impossible to find.
It also mentioned somewhere that, because God is the light, or Jesus is the light, and that was also kind of
Yeah.
related to that.
Right? Yeah. And what about manna? What can you tell me about manna? Okay. How long? Well, it stayed on the ground till it got hot and then it evaporated away. But it's only good for one day, right? Except on Friday. And then Saturday was the Sabbath. And so on Friday, the stuff they collected Friday would last all the way till Sunday. What does that tell you about God and His provisions? Well, yes, there is a day of rest.
How serious he is about the Sabbath.
Yes. How serious He is about the Sabbath.
If we look at him for our needs, he's gonna meet them, instead of us trying to do it on our own.
Right? Yep. How does the Lord's Prayer go? Give us this day what? Daily. I think that is very significant. That it was a daily thing. Because a lot of times we want stuff, we want it way ahead of time. We don't want to wait and do one day at a time. But that's the way God leads us a lot of times. That's the way He provides for us a lot of times, is just one day at a time. You get through this day, and then we'll go to the next day.
When they traveled, they didn't need the burden of a lot of extra stuff.
Right? That's true, too. I hadn't thought of that, but that's good. And then, how are the Ten Commandments categorized? The first four are what? Man to God. The last five are what? Man to man. And the one in the middle is number 5. Honor father and mother. And it's kind of in between man and God and man to man. And because, father in a home, the father kind of represents God in a lot of ways. And I think that's really important. And the first 4 are very, very important. And then, yes, that's right. It's the only command with a promise, number 5. And what is the promise? A long life, yeah. Now, it doesn't mean that, if you honor your father and mother, that you're not going to be in an accident, killed in an accident, or get some kind of disease, or get sent off to war and get killed. What it is, it's a general principle that if you honor your parents, you're going to have a long life because, and I think a lot of it is just a logical thing. If we honor our parents and do the things that our parents tell us to do, they've lived through a lot of this, all right? And they know what mistakes to avoid. And if you listen to them and obey them, you're going to avoid a lot of mistakes. And thereby, you're probably going to have a longer life. But it's a general principle. There are some things in the Bible that are specific promises, to each person or to certain individuals, but there's also general principles, and I believe that one's a principle. What was the difference in the items for the tabernacle that were made of bronze and silver and gold? Did y'all hear that?
I know there's a lot of different ones, and I just figured gold was most important.
It is, yeah, it's the most precious.
And there's silver and there's, things that were more important to God, I guess is what I
Where were they?
in the most holy.
The gold stuff was in the most holy and the holy place. The silver stuff was outside of that. The bronze stuff was the furthest stuff out. So the closer you got to God, the more precious the materials were. I thought that was pretty interesting. And the last question I have is, what are the Urim and Thummim? Sorry. Todd, what? Method of determining God's will. I had never heard that part about the one that the Urim maybe being something that kind of had glowed or had a light to it. Most of the time, I've been told that it was more like almost like dice, that they would take it and kind of toss it out, and they could read what to do, which makes it think like that's kind of weird. But remember, they didn't have the Holy Spirit living in them. And God promised that He would lead them and lead them through this. So when they did it, they were looking to God to show them what to do. It wasn't just like, okay, let's do a haphazard thing and dump it out here. They were truly looking for what God wanted them to do when they used that. So exactly how all of it worked, we don't know, but it was a way to determine God's will. Okay, yes, ma'am.
Are you still talking about last week or?
Either one. No, I've already got through both of them.
I was amazed at how detailed things were to the point of, when they put the names of the tribes on things for the shoulders, they were put in first order.
Yeah. And 6 on one shoulder and 6 on the other shoulder?
To go to that length.
Yes.
Okay, firstborn and so on, and see, the other thing, I was gonna ask about the bells.
Mm-hmm.
That was so they could hear you coming in and out?
Well,
Most holy?
most of the time, what I've heard is that when he was in the Holy of Holies, he would be moving around, sprinkling the blood and stuff like that. But if he walked into there in an unworthy manner because he did not fully consecrate himself or did not do the things he was supposed to before he got in there, they believed that if he stepped inside there, God would kill him. I mean, it's a very serious thing, and they were very, very serious about it. And if God killed him, the only way they would know that is the bells would stop ringing. And he also usually had a rope tied around his foot, his ankle, so that they could pull him out, because nobody could go in there and save him or go in there and get him. But yeah, it was very, very serious. A lot of times we don't take God. That's what I talked about Sunday. We don't show God the reverence and honor and fear and stuff that He deserves, because He is an awesome God. Anyone have a God shot throughout the weeks? I know I'm over. That you want to share?
All of this material that they had to build.
Mm-hmm.
This is the family they took from the Egyptians.
Yeah, most of it.
So they carried that out of Egypt
I don't know about the wood, whether they had taken wood with them, or if it was wooden carts that they took apart, or if they harvested at some place, because there's not a whole lot of trees in that area. All right.
I was reading about the jewels.
Mhm.
They didn't use diamonds and rubies because they were too hard to polish.
Oh, yeah? Well, they're also very, very small. But of course, I think all of these were little. They were either multiple ones or very small ones. We look at things being, huge, but they weren't always that way. All right. Well, let's join hands and we will sing our dismissal chorus. And I'll get out of the way. Oh, okay.